Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey to figure out how the economic machine actually works. We're going zero to hero, starting with the most basic reality of human existence, scarcity. And piece by piece, we'll see how it builds all the way up to complex business strategy. Let's uncover the hidden forces shaping our world and piece together the incredibly detailed puzzle of microeconomics.
Right off the bat, let me ask you a question. What is your opportunity cost for watching this explainer for the next 10 minutes? Think about it. You could be scrolling through social media, answering emails, or grabbing a quick coffee. But you chose to be right here. And by making that choice, you implicitly decided that the value of the knowledge you're about to gain is greater than whatever else you could have done with this time. You've literally just performed an economic calculation. Economics isn't just about money, right? It's a lens for viewing the world and understanding exactly how we make choices.
So that brings us to our first formal definition. Opportunity cost is the objective value of the next best alternative foregone when the decision is made. It's the absolute foundational reality of scarcity. Because our resources, things like our time, our money, our energy, they're strictly limited, but our wants are virtually endless. So every single choice you make requires rejecting another. To choose is to refuse. Honestly, if you understand this one single concept, you already have a massive leg up on understanding human behavior.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, scarcity and opportunity cost. Then, consumer choice and utility. Third, market efficiency and equilibrium. Fourth, the market structure continuum. Fifth, rules of profit maximization. And finally, value creation and capture. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Scarcity and opportunity cost.
So the economic way of thinking is really defined by 6 key ideas. Let's run through them. First, a choice is always a trade-off. You have to give up something to get something else. Second, people make rational choices by strictly comparing benefits and costs to maximize their net benefit. Third, benefit is entirely subjective. It's based on your personal preferences. Fourth, as we just talked about, the cost is the opportunity cost. Fifth, and this is a really critical one to understand in detail, most choices are how much decisions made at the margin. We rarely make all or nothing black and white decisions, right? It's usually about doing a little more or a little less. And finally, choices respond to incentives. Change the cost or the benefit, and you inherently change the behavior.
Let's actually zoom in on that fifth point, thinking at the margin. What does that actually mean in the real world? Well, let's say you buy a monthly gym membership. The money you spend on that, that's a sunk cost. It's gone. But the marginal cost, the specific cost of consuming the next unit or hitting the gym one more time today, is zero. Conversely, if you've already studied enough to easily get an A on a test, the marginal benefit of studying one more hour is basically zero. Rational people and businesses make detailed decisions by weighing these marginal costs against marginal benefits, not by looking at total past costs.
Moving on to Section 2, consumer choice and utility.
In economics, we assume consumers are always trying to maximize their utility, which is just a fancy econ term for usefulness or happiness. But obviously, you can't have everything. You are strictly limited by your budget constraint. Plus, you face the law of diminishing marginal utility. Think about it. The first slice of pizza brings you immense joy, but the fifth slice? Yeah, not so much. So, as a rational consumer, you unconsciously balance your limited budget across different goods to maximize your total happiness. You end up substituting relatively more expensive goods for cheaper ones just to get the absolute best bang for your buck.
Section 3. Market efficiency and equilibrium.
Now, when buyers and sellers actually interact, they create economic value. Let's think of this value as a giant pie. This pie gets divided into 2 highly specific slices. The consumer surplus is the buyer's slice. It's the gap between what you were willing to pay, based on your own personal preferences, and the actual market price you paid. So if you value a new phone at $1,000, but you managed to buy it for $800, you've just got $200 of consumer surplus. It's a bargain. On the flip side, the producer's surplus is the seller's slice, and that's the exact price they receive minus their actual cost of production.
And when the market reaches equilibrium, that perfect point where supply meets demand, the total size of this pie, the social surplus, is as large as it can possibly be. This brings us to a really beautiful, elegant concept, economic efficiency. Efficiency means it is mathematically impossible to improve the situation of one party without imposing a cost on another. All possible gains from trade have been fully achieved. There's literally zero wasted value, or what economists call deadweight loss.
Section 4. The market structure continuum. Looking at the diverse competitive landscapes that businesses have to navigate, we generally see two extremes. On one end, you have perfect competition. Think of agriculture, where you have numerous small farms selling identical wheat. They are the ultimate price takers. They have absolutely zero pricing power. Then, on the absolute other extreme, you have a monopoly, where one firm sells a completely unique product, giving them absolute price-making power. In the middle of those two, we find monopolistic competition, where many firms sell slightly differentiated products, and oligopolies, where a few massive firms dominate the space. Exactly where a business sits on this continuum completely dictates its strategy and its ability to capture that pie we were just talking about.
Which brings us to Section 5, Rules of Profit Maximization.
If you want to maximize profit, your firm must deeply understand its cost structure. Costs are essentially divided into fixed costs, like factory rent, which do not change regardless of your output, and variable costs, like raw materials, which rise with every single unit of production. The vital bridge between accounting and economics here is called the contribution margin, which is just the price minus the variable cost per unit. This margin shows exactly how much each unit sold contributes to paying off that fixed overhead. Once those fixed costs are fully covered, which is your break-even point, the contribution margin of every single additional unit flows directly 100% right into your operating profit. It's a beautiful thing.
And if we look at the mathematical intersection of these concepts, we see exactly how profit maximization works. You have a marginal cost curve, the cost of producing one more unit, and it intersects with the marginal revenue line, which is the income from selling one more unit. If you look at the net revenue, or the profit curve, the exact point where that profit hits its absolute highest peak aligns perfectly with that intersection of cost and revenue.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is the golden rule of microeconomics. Profit is maximized exactly at the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, MR equals MC. Think about it in detail. As long as the revenue from selling one more unit is higher than the cost to produce it, the firm is adding to its total profit, right? So they should keep producing. But the very moment the cost of that next unit exceeds the revenue it brings in, profit drops. Therefore, a totally rational firm produces exactly up to the point where MR equals MC. That is the peak of the mountain.
And finally, Section 6, Value Creation and Capture.
In modern business strategy, we like to separate economic activity into two completely distinct concepts. First, there's value creation. This is about expanding the total pie. It genuinely increases social welfare. When you invent a new product that people absolutely love, you are creating value. Value capture, on the other hand, is about slicing that pie and appropriating the value for yourself. It's totally determined by your pricing and your market power. Remember consumer and producer surplus? Well, creating value makes the total surplus bigger for everyone. Capturing value is the firm fighting to keep a larger piece of that producer's surplus for itself.
Plotting these concepts on a matrix actually builds a fascinating framework for understanding the entire economy. Down in the bottom left, we have activities that create immense value but capture very little, like basic scientific research. It wildly benefits humanity, but the scientists themselves rarely capture billions in personal profit. Then in the top right, we have things that capture value but create none, like theft, fraud, or aggressive financial front-running. That stuff just transfers wealth without expanding the pie at all. And down in the bottom right, failing to create or capture value? Well, that just means you have highly inefficient operations.
But the magic? The magic happens right there in the top left quadrant. True strategy is operating exactly at the intersection of value creation and value capture. A competent business strategist knows that you must have entrepreneurial mechanisms to create a new, bigger pie for society. But you also have to understand the cold, hard economics of market structures and marginal costs to actually capture a slice of that pie so you can sustain your business. Focusing on only one of those is pretty much a guaranteed path to failure.
Which brings us to the end of our exploration today. But before you go, I want to leave you with a provocative thought so you can apply all this to your own life. Look at your own career, your own daily tasks. Are you genuinely expanding the economic pie through true value creation, or are you just expending energy fighting for a slice of the pie through value capture? Understanding the detailed difference between the two is really the very first step to truly mastering the economic machine. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep thinking at the margin.